never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Fine.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I figured since in yesterday's video, which was of course our weekly top 10 countdown, this week we discussed college football, and I talked about during that video a lot of the teams that are already projected to be the playoff teams. That today I wanted to tell you about a team that I didn't talk about in yesterday's video, and not really a lot of people are talking about them being a possible playoff team or having an outside shot of being a playoff team. But honestly, I think they have a pretty good chance, and that is the Wisconsin Badgers. Now, I personally believe and I personally feel that the only thing that's holding Wisconsin back is Barry Alvarez. And of course, if you're a long time college football follower, you know that Barry Alvarez used to be Wisconsin's head football coach. And he is honestly, really, truly the guy that put Wisconsin on the map as far as in college football, because before he went there, they really weren't established at all. But back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when they had guys like Ron Dayne and running backs like that, Barry Alvarez was their coach. And they pretty much played in the Outback Bowl just about every year. Now, nowadays, the Outback Bowl is not really a big deal. But 25 years ago, when there weren't playoffs and when there weren't 125 bowl games, going to the Outback Bowl meant you had a pretty dadgum good season. But then Barry Alvarez retired from head coaching to become the school's athletic director. But in reality, he still wants to be the head football coach, even though he is the AD. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes. I feel like if he changes, Wisconsin has a pretty dadgum good chance of making the playoffs this year. Of course, this is Luke Fickell's first year as the head coach after coming over from Cincinnati. I've always been a big fan of Luke Fickell, even though it's a terrible name, because every time I hear it, I think of pickles, so I get hungry. But Luke Fickell is still a phenomenal head coach. So let's go ahead and talk about Wisconsin's 2023 college football schedule, and then I'll tell you what I think their record has a chance of being if Barry Alvarez will let Luke Fickell be Luke Fickell. They open up the season on September the 2nd, non-conference against Buffalo. And then on the 9th of September, they play Washington State. On the 16th of September, they play Georgia Southern. So they open up the season with all three of their non-conference games right in a row, and then they're in Big Ten play the rest of the season. And then they close out the month of September on Friday night, September 22nd, against Purdue, because in week 5, they're off. So they get 15 days off after they play Purdue on that Friday night, September 22nd. They kick off the month of October back on Saturdays now, playing Rutgers. Then they play Iowa on the 14th, Illinois on the 21st, Ohio State Halloween weekend, October 28th. Then in the month of November, they have Indiana on the 4th, Northwestern on the 11th, Nebraska on the 18th, and they close out the regular season against Minnesota on Thanksgiving weekend, November the 25th. Now, when I look at Wisconsin's schedule, honestly, really, truly, if Barry Alvarez will let Luke Fickell be Luke Fickell, I think they go 11-1, and that loss will be Halloween weekend against Ohio State. Ohio State's just better than they are. So if you're Wisconsin, there's no shame in losing to a team that's better than you are. But I do think Ohio State beats them. But the reason why I say Barry Alvarez needs to let Luke Fickell be Luke Fickell is because earlier I mentioned the name of Ron Dayne. So if you've been watching college football for at least 25 years, you know who Ron Dayne is. When he was at Wisconsin, Barry Alvarez was the coach, and Ron Dayne ran the ball about 30 times a game, and there was nothing exciting about it. It's like if you ever talk to the old school Georgia fans, they say they hated when Vince Dooley was the coach because every play it was Herschel up the middle, Herschel to the left, Herschel to the right. Well, when Ron Dayne was at Wisconsin, it was the same way. It was Ron Dayne to the left, Ron Dayne up the middle, Ron Dayne to the right. And the next set of downs, it was Ron Dayne to the left, Ron Dayne up the middle, Ron Dayne to the right. But that wasn't just a Ron Dayne thing. They did that after Ron Dayne graduated. But the next set of running backs just weren't as good as Ron Dayne was. But back in those days, when most football teams only scored 17, 18 points a game, you could win like that. So Barry Alvarez was winning 8 or 9 games a year at Wisconsin with 275 total offensive yards a game because he won with running the ball, not committing any turnovers, and playing good defense. Well, nowadays, football's changed, and you can't win like that. So a few years back, Wisconsin had a coach named Gary Anderson, and they were actually winning, and they were actually throwing the ball and showing signs of life on offense. But Barry Alvarez didn't like the fact that they were becoming a passing team, and they weren't doing 3 yards and a cloud of dust. So Barry Alvarez went to Gary Anderson and told him, hey, you've got to stop passing the ball so much. We're Wisconsin. We want to be a ground and pound team. We've got to run the ball. So when the season ended, Gary Anderson left. And the reason why he left was because what he was doing was working. They were winning, but Barry Alvarez didn't like it. He ain't satisfied with being just the AD. He wants to be the AD and the football coach. But you can't play football the way football was played 25 years ago and win. You're just not going to do it. So Barry Alvarez will keep his nose out of Luke Fickell's team and let Luke Fickell be Luke Fickell, Wisconsin is going to be really good because Luke Fickell is a good coach. But I have a feeling that's going to happen because I have a feeling that before agreeing to become the head coach, Luke Fickell asked Barry Alvarez, "Are you going to let me coach this team the way I want to?" And I think Barry told him, "Yeah," because I don't think Luke Fickell would have came if Barry would have told him no. And I think after Gary Anderson left, Brett Bielema didn't work out, Paul Chryst didn't work out, and I think Barry Alvarez is finally going to realize that you can't run the ball 35, 40 times a game anymore and win 14-10. It's just not going to happen. So I do expect Barry Alvarez to keep his nose out of the offense and let Luke Fickell run the offense the way he wants to. And if so, they'll go 11-1 and they'll lose to Ohio State. But if by some chance Luke Fickell is forced to be the old Wisconsin, just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball with 3 yards and a cloud of dust all game long, they'll probably go typical Wisconsin, 8-4, 7-5. But I expect 11-1 with their one loss coming to Ohio State. If they do go 11-1, depending on what everybody else does, they've got at least an outside shot of making the playoffs. Of course, next year when we go to 12 teams, 11-1 will no doubt be in the playoffs, but right now it's going to be hard for Wisconsin because they're not a perennial powerhouse. So if there's 8 or 9 teams that are all 11-1, Wisconsin is going to be one of the schools that's going to get left out, especially right there in the Big Ten. If they're right there in the Big Ten and Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Michigan all go 11-1, Wisconsin's getting left out. But I do think they're going to be really good this year. And their quarterback, even though they haven't officially announced it, I expect it to be Tanner Mordecai. And that name might sound familiar to you. He's entering his 25th year in college football. Not really, it's his 6th year. But he started out in 2018 at Oklahoma. But after being the backup in 18, 19, and 20 at Oklahoma, he transferred to SMU, and he's been a starter there the last 2 years. And now he's transferred to Wisconsin, and I believe the only reason he went to Wisconsin is to be their starting quarterback, because we've got to remember that last year Wisconsin's quarterback was Graham Mertz, and Graham Mertz transferred. So now you have Tanner Mordecai entering his 6th year as a college football quarterback. And then you also have Braden Locke and Nick Evers. So Tanner Mordecai undoubtedly has the most experience, and I expect him to be the starting quarterback. I don't think he transferred to Wisconsin to be the backup. He could have stayed at SMU and been the starter for another year. So Tanner Mordecai entering his 6th year in college, his 3rd school, Wisconsin. I think he'll be their starting quarterback. Any thoughts on this? Please feel free to let me know. So Wisconsin will go 11-1 this year with their loss coming to Ohio State. So watch their opening game with Buffalo. I know they're going to win that game, just to see the kind of offense they run. If they come out and they're running the slow, old-fashioned, pro-style, I-formation offense where they're under center and their running back gets 25, 30 carries, then you can scratch everything I just said, because they'll probably go 8-4, 7-5. But if they come out against Buffalo and they're running a hurry-up offense and the quarterback is in the shotgun, then watch out. Wisconsin's going to be really, really good, because no doubt Luke Fickell is a good football coach. Homes for Our Troops is a publicly funded 501c nonprofit organization that builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post 9/11 veterans. Since the 2004 inception, nearly 90 cents of every dollar spent has gone directly to our program services for veterans. Visit at hfotusa.org. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. What do you get when you cross a snowman with a vampire? Frost bitten. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.